All right, let's get the meeting started. So I'd like to welcome everyone to the 960th monthly meeting, getting closer and closer to 1,000. So our guest speaker is Michael O'Shea, talking to us about a trip to Chile with the Chile Educator Ambassadors Program. You may know Michael from the PopScope movement, which some of our members have helped in the past. It's a really cool thing we'll hear more about later.
All right, so now it's time for the observing report.
Yeah, Rich has a marathon.
That's okay.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
This cartoon that Glenn sent in. Glenn can't be with us tonight. Glenn, are you here on, I don't think he'll even be here on Zoom. I don't think he's here tonight. He found this cartoon, and he thought this was dedicated to Chris Elledge's cat. I don't know if you remember, if you paid attention when we were zooming all the time, but Chris's cat, all you see is like a little tail go through the, and just the tail. But this is Galileo's cat just nudging the telescope in the right direction, and then it's because of the cat that he makes the great discovery that he did. Oakland. I don't know where he finds these things, but anyway, the quote of the night. The good thing about science is that it's true whether or not you believe in it. Neil deGrasse Tyson.
I think he said, science doesn't give a shit about what you believe.
Oh, that would, I think I'll clean it up then, sure. So this is a PG meeting, Christine. There'll be kids in the audience. So we have a lot of pictures of the comet, and there may even be some animations. Were you able to incorporate those? I'm not going to ask people to go on and on and on about this because it would just take us all night. A lot of the information will be in the newsletter or on the discuss list. If you really have a burning question about what Maria did to get this image of the comet, just shoot her an email. Glenn liked this picture, and I do too, is because this is, how many of you heard, the news stories about green comet lights the night sky? Lord, it's no wonder we get a bad name. I think the imagers are you folks that do this churn out some unbelievable stuff. That is just fantastic. But then the media gets that. And then they run with those images, and then they blow the whole thing out of proportion. This is pretty much what it looked like. You had a pair of binoculars from Framingham, and I didn't see any green color. It's still visible, and we'll look at it when we get back up, when we start doing our observing sites. But here's Eric Malafew on January 29th, another sort of wide field view. And then we zoom in a little bit. Doug Paul shot this on the 19th of January. I like the star trails. That's really a nice touch. Nazmith Nasir did this one on the 24th of January. And you can see the green color there. Remember, comets have they have an ion tail and they have a dust tail. The green color comes from the exotic carbon molecule C2. If you think back to your days in chemistry, go home tonight and try and draw a Lewis structure for C2. Kind of can't be done. You can see the ion tail. It looks better on the screen here, but here's a bit of the ion tail. There's the green coma, and this is part of the dust tail. And back about a week ago, didn't we pass through the plane of the dust tail? And the comet for a little while sported that anti-tail, right? I don't know if the images were successfully capturing that, but Stephen Bugler did this one. I like this one with Charles Wright. You can see as he changed his filters. That's kind of a nice effect. Dan Lee took this on February 2nd. Telescopically, this is what I got. That's the impression I got when I looked at it through my scope. Big, diffuse, a bit of a central condensation. At low powers, it looked star-like, but when you crank the power up, it looked more just condensed. It wasn't as star-like, but that's kind of the telescopic view that I saw.
Are you seeing any color?
I didn't see any color. But these eyes are very old, so.
Sure.
And Gary Shaw did that one. And here's a sketch from Andrew Howard. Made a nice sketch of it. So we've been out observing this comet as often as we can. The moon is going dark now, so if you come up to the clubhouse or just observe from your own backyard, this coming week is the time to see the comet. It's fading now, but it's still pretty bright. And so to try to get out there and see it, when is it coming back? 50,000 years or something silly like that. So that's a chance. It's a chance in a lifetime to see it. And this is the latest and greatest finder chart from Sky and Telescope magazine. So you can see as we move through February, it's heading more and more. It went past Capella the other night, past Mars on the 10th, what are we on today? Today's the 9th? We're on the 9th? So this is probably a universal time thing. So on the 10th there, it's probably near Mars tonight. And you can see where it goes for the rest of the week. But I'm sure it's in Stellarium. I know it's in Sky Safari Pro or Sky Safari. So there, and you can just go on Sky and Telescope's website and see grab this from a Bob King article. Nice.
The animation.
Oh, you want to see the animation? Sure, we have some animations. These are kind of cool. Just watch these real fast. I think they're really pretty. And again, the discuss list has been, sort of like bombarded with comet pictures and discussion. So that's what it's for, really. Yeah, look at that, look at that.
There's a guy on Facebook named Antonio Paris. He's down in Florida. He's shooting some amazingly clear comet pictures.
Nice. Yeah, that's pretty nice.
This one is 6 hours of motion.
Big power too.
This one's fine.
Yeah, they got some great. It looks way better here.
The projector.
Turn this around.
Do that from home, Corey?
This was from Verrill Farm in Sudbury.
Oh, that's yours?
Yeah.
Oh, that was great.
It went from Dave. Sorry, this is recently put this on, so there's all these dialogues popping up.
Yeah, look at that.
This one is from David, around an hour and a half motion. I think this one looks better on the projector because it has a higher
Oh yeah.
background brightness. The projector seems to flip at the bottom.
I'm still amazed when you look at these pictures, what these cameras today can pick up in really short exposure times. I mean, I don't know how deep those stars went, but man, you can't see that many stars with your telescope.
This is from Doug Paul, the 4 hours of motion. Yeah.
Should we be able to see this for the next week or?
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
Oh, sure. For a while.
it's getting higher in the sky, right?
It's getting,
It's zenith.
it's crossing the zenith in the early evening.
Getting lower.
And it'll eventually head further south in the sky, but
Okay.
it'll be visible for another month, easy.
This one is from Marshall Wilcox.
Nice, look at that.
Lasts
Nice
3
one.
hours.
That's the other thing, the media, I just go crazy when they make it sound like this comet is visible for like one night, get out and see it, when the reality is it's not visible to the naked eye really, and, but it's not a flash in the pan, it's we all know, but the general public tends not to.
I heard
Um,
it's going to be like a path over to the sun.
Say again, I'm sorry, can I say again?
I heard it's like going to go to the sun hemisphere soon.
Eventually, yeah, it'll cut below our horizon I don't know when that happens, but
Oh, okay. So it's
I've only observed it a couple of times that, it's,
not this month.
you've seen one comet, you've seen them all. Speaking of getting out there and observing, so the ZTF comet is an ongoing sort of thing, but Venus and Neptune are in conjunction, a relatively tough observation this coming week. But Venus is brilliant, Neptune's not so bright. If you've noticed where Venus is in the evening twilight, I think seeing Neptune that close to an 8th magnitude planet, 8.7 magnitude planet might be a challenge. Glenn always asks me to put algol stuff in here, so a convenient variable star observation will be on next Thursday night at 7:39 in the evening. Algol reaches a minimum. The moon in conjunction will happen on the 21st. Jupiter is the next night, and Jupiter and Venus are in conjunction on 3/1. If you've been watching if you've been reading my 19 plus objects with mini Messier marathon and Jupiter events, I noted for the one in February, which I sent out late because sometimes I forget where we are time-wise. It's like, wait, it's the 6th, I haven't sent it out yet? Anyway, it's the last one I'm gonna do until the fall, just because the window of observing Jupiter is so small now. As we're getting, towards Jupiter's in solar conjunction, I think April 11th, which seems like a long way off, but that evening window of looking at Jupiter is really closing up. So Saturn's out of reach after, you won't even see it now. Venus is 27 degrees east of the sun, 11.6 arc seconds, 89% illuminated. Try going out in the daytime to find it. That's your homework every month, isn't that your homework? Every month. I looked at Jupiter about a week or so ago at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Sun was an hour before sunset. Yeah. And so some of these bright planets are really easy to find in the daylight. And I just do the old alt-azimuth thing. And it takes me literally a few minutes to lock onto it and take a look at it. Jupiter was easily visible in my finder scope at 4 in the afternoon. So just, again, homework, right? Jupiter setting early, Uranus is setting around midnight, Mars transits at about 7 o'clock, getting awfully tiny as we move away from it, 9.3 arc seconds. The Observer's Challenge for this month is the Flame Nebula, NGC 2024. I don't know if anybody's even tried for this one, but I know from Framingham, with my naked eye limiting magnitude of about 4.5, this bad boy is out of reach. I don't care how many filters I throw on the telescope. I know I'm not going to see that from Framingham. So if I'm going to find that, I'll have to get to a darker sky. So we might be able to try it at the clubhouse. I think it responds well to UHCs, UHC filter especially, and I think maybe Oxy 3, but that might be too much. But here it is next to ALMA, which is really close to the Horsehead Nebula. Another particularly challenging object right here. Big Flame Nebula is actually fairly big, but see if you can see it. Get out there and look for it, and then write up a little report and send it to Roger Ivester, so he can add it to his monthly, Observer's Challenge report. He and Sue French are doing a great job with that. This is a spectacular image that Mario Mata took. I think Mario told us last month this was with the 32-inch telescope, but holy moly, look at that! Crazy, just crazy. And here's another spectacular image from Doug Paul. Just amazing what the imagers can pull up out of the sky. And again, it looks so much better here on the screen. It doesn't look as red as that, but man, what a beautiful object that is. So give it a shot.
That's 5 hours with a 6-inch aperture.
5 hours, that's impressive. I'm not that stubborn or patient.
My computer is.
There we go. We do some nice work, Doug. Thank you for sharing all that with us. Wow. So that's the Flame Nebula. Oh, and here's Mark Helton took this nice shot, and I turned it sideways just to so I could make it bigger. But you can see how close the flame is to the Horsehead. It is. I've never, in the 50 years I've been doing visual astronomy, maybe more than that actually, I've never seen the Horsehead visually. Slav, that night you had your gajillion dollar night intensifier H alpha thing. You could see it just pulled up with your eye and go, oh look, I can see a nebula for the Horsehead. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I've never seen it myself visually. It's tough. They say an H beta filter will help, but I think you still need really dark skies. Yeah. Anyway, this month's object is NGC. I have to look at it. 2841. It's a relatively bright galaxy in Ursa Major. I don't know if you've ever just poured across this part of the sky, but this part of the sky, the Big Dipper itself, is just chock full of galaxies. If you like to look at galaxies, this is where you want to play around in the early springtime. It is loaded with them. And so I encourage you to, break out, go in the Royal Astronomical Handbook and look at the best NGC objects and pick out the galaxies in Ursa Majoris and have a look at them. There are some amazing ones. And there are some hard ones as well. This is M109 right here. M109 is tricky. That's pretty faint. M108 is very faint also. But this one looks to be a fairly bright object, so I can't wait to actually take a look at it. So that's the object for this month. And Doug Paul, thank you again for that image. It looks fantastic.
That's about a 1 degree field of view.
Oh, okay.
That's a wide field shot.
Okay, so it's kind of tiny, but it's worth getting out there to look for it. I think the nucleus is pretty bright. As you can see there, the nucleus is pretty bright. And you should definitely check it out. And again, write up a little teeny report and send it off to Roger. He'll love it. Glenn and I were, and this is the last slide that you have to endure with me up here, for now at least. Glenn and I have been talking about ways to get more members up to the clubhouse or just out observing in general. And so, coming up in March is the annual Messier Marathon. When if you pick your night correctly, in theory, if you're skilled and you're not tired, you can see all 110 Messier objects in a single night. This year, the dark of the moon is on the 17th and 18th of March, which means if you go through the whole marathon, at the last gasp, you'll probably fail to see M75 in Capricornus. It's just too bright in the pre-dawn hours. If you wait too long, you'll lose M74, that galaxy, and it's in Pisces. So the Messier Marathon is really hard to do. I personally can't stay up that late. But if you want to do that, that's fine. But my mini marathon every month would be a nice way to get members up there once a month to do a Messier 10K run. Something a little simpler, something without pressure. Or maybe include Messier objects in a monthly scavenger hunt. Here are 10 things to go look for. See if you can find them between dusk and 10 o'clock at night. So you can get home before the news comes on. Glenn loves double stars. So he's interested in doing some seasonal double star challenges, having folks come up to the clubhouse, or again, from their own backyard. He and I have talked about having family nights, or new member open house nights. A family night we envision, like bring the kids out, some Saturday night when the moon is maybe first quarter, bring the fam to look at the telescopes, to look through the telescopes, to do some observing. And so we've been brainstorming again to try and get members to come out and do more observing. I'll bet most of the members in the club are visual observers as opposed to being imagers. If you're a visual observer and you want to break into imaging, that's ALVA. That's what ALVA's putting together with the TUMI Observatory, reattaching telescopes. The equipment's all there. Chris does a nice job of scheduling up the Middleman Observatory. You can collect data. You don't have to buy the equipment. We have all the equipment. And it's spectacular equipment. And then all you have to do is just get the data and then go learn how to process it. So if you want to be an imager, right now you're a visual astronomer, you're not sure if you want to break into it, because it costs a lot of money, right? Doesn't that equipment cost a lot of money? You can try it for free at the clubhouse, and then if you like it, well, you can still use the equipment at the clubhouse for free. So I believe that is the last of the member observing nights of the observers report for the month. Sorry I went so long, but you do know I like to talk about this stuff. So get out there and observe, you crazy kids.
Rich, I have one comment, if I could.
Of course.
I did want to mention that this Saturday would be a wonderful night to come up there. We have Venus, Jupiter, and Mars in the comet, all quite visible in the evening. We'll have lots of deep sky stuff. And then if you want to stay up late, you can watch pretty much the last quarter moon come up too. So undoubtedly, if we have enough people there, we'll be using the 25-inch. And I know for a fact there'll be other members there with their telescopes too. So be a great night. There's little or no snow on the ground, so the transparency could be pretty good. Good opportunity this Saturday night after the work party.
And if you don't want to drop $20,000 on a 25-inch dog, good news, we have one of those already, and it's on a tracking platform that's working pretty well. So come on up and observe. Just hang out. It's a blast. It's fun.
So next up, we have our guest speaker, Michael O'Shea. Michael O'Shea has recently returned from Chile with the Astronomy and Chile Educator Ambassadors Program, where he visited breathtaking telescopes and observatories at the cutting edge of astronomy, including CTIO, Gemini, ALMA, and Vera Rubin. He will outline the observatory's extensive educational outreach programs, Indigenous astronomy, and community observatory relationships. Many of you may know Michael as the co-founder of PopScope with Viva Dadwal, a community-based urban astronomy movement that brings diverse populations together through joyful, free astronomy events in the cities across Canada and the US. PopScope volunteers have hosted over 400 events that have introduced over 20,000 guests to the night sky since 2014. Spreading the joy and love for the night sky, really sidewalk astronomy, bring the telescopes to where the people are. So with that, I'd like to welcome Michael.
I already made him come.
Thank you, Chris.
Let's see if I can live up to that introduction. I gotta be here. I need what?
No, you just need to share on.
Oh, I'm already on the Zoom, right?
Michael, when were you here last?
5 years ago. It's
Yeah,
really good to see you all.
Here.
And it wasn't nothing personal. I had a very good experience here, but I moved to Canada for several years. And then,
Escaping the draft for you, or?
yes, escaping a lot of things. Maybe. And the pandemic hit, and good and bad for me. The good was that I came back to Boston, so I'm actually living in Cambridge, not too far away. So hopefully I'll see you all a lot more. I'm very happy to announce I got married, and we are expecting a child on the way. So hopefully a future ATMoB member in the works. Will pay their dues. All right. Someone will pay the dues. All right, let's see if I can finagle this here. I'm going to do a present in, and then do a screen share, right? Okay. All right, can everyone see my screen on Zoom? Yes, okay, and everyone can hear me in the room here.
Yes.
I guess if you can't hear me, then you wouldn't know I'm asking you. But if for any reason you have trouble hearing me, let me know. I'll talk louder or walk around MC style. So, good to see you all. Really great to be in person. My God, years of online astronomy outreach was not fun, so it's good to be back in person. And good to see some old familiar faces, I'll say. Good to see Corey again, who I met on a mountaintop, right? Where did we meet, Corey? Was it on Waits Mountain?
One of the star parties.
Yeah. And I'm glad I saw you there. I think Kelly said I needed to talk to you about something for a star party, and I looked over, and there you were. So, well, I know it's 9 o'clock, and I'm sure we want to watch the evening news or get ready for bed, so let's get started. Who has been to Chile? You raise your hand. Okay, so 1, 2.
Up here.
Up there, we got 3. Anyone on Zoom been to Chile? Kelly, yep, Kelly's been to Chile. And I'm remembering, I think I attended a presentation by Kelly about ALMA 5-6 years ago. And I thought about that when I applied for this program. So Kelly, I am attempting to follow in your very big footsteps. And has anyone done this particular program in Chile? Not yet. So the hope is that by the end of this, you'll decide to apply. There's one thing we take away from this presentation is that we're going to apply for this program. It is mostly funded. If you do some self-fundraising, you can make it completely covered, which is what I did with some funding from my university, University of Toronto. So today we're going to talk about dark skies, big telescopes, and if we have time, a sneezing llama. Stay tuned. So thanks so much for having me. Corey responded immediately to my inquiry, and thanks to everyone for spending some of your evening with me here.
You're very welcome.
We're going to talk about the telescopes. I know there are folks here who are engineers, who are technicians, who probably know more about the technical aspects of this than I do. So if there's any tough question about, how thick this lens is, I might defer to someone in the room. But as an educator, as a student affairs professional, I'm going to focus on some of the people I've met, the land that we visited, and some of the really, really amazing, really inspiring outreach programs and materials that I learned about, most of which are bilingual in Spanish. And I brought a lot of that stuff back with me from Chile, brought back some souvenirs. So if I don't get to it during the presentation, please come up afterwards. I got loads of neat stuff from the observatories down there. And be careful around llamas. Some acronyms. I think most folks are familiar with some of these acronyms by now, but if not, there they are. So, what is it? It started off, this program about a few years ago, I want to say about a decade ago, started off as a National Science Foundation proposal to bring informal astronomy educators, like the folks in the room, down to these amazing observatories down in Chile that most Americans don't know about. And then these folks would go back to their home communities share the wealth of knowledge that they learned while they were down there, and hopefully convince their local Congress people to keep funding these telescopes, right? So every year there's a group that goes down there. In our case, we were meant to go down in 2020, I think. That got pushed back, understandably, 6 months at a time, and then pushed back a final time because of a freak snowstorm last summer that closed a lot of the telescopes. These are some of the amazing people I met who are on the trip with me. Folks from all over the US, different backgrounds, some recently immigrated, some Native American, various identities, various professional backgrounds, various sexual orientations. So a really amazing mix of people. You might recognize some of them. I think Kelly knows Dawn from his work down in Texas. She leads the IDA chapter in Texas. But a really cool mix of people. Most of them, like you or me, right? We've got day jobs, and then by night we spend all our time and money doing fun astronomy stuff. So really cool group. I think these are our people. If you want to spend 2 weeks with your friends or club members down in Chile, this is a group for you. There's the crew dwarfed by one of the telescope dishes at ALMA, and this isn't even the biggest telescope. There's 3 kinds of telescopes in the ALMA array. They're all radio telescopes. This is, I believe, one of the smaller telescopes, so you can really see how big the dish is there. The biggest dish of those telescopes is, I believe, 12 meters. So who pays for it? That's what everyone wanted to know. That's what my wife wanted to know. It's like, who's paying for this? Luckily, it was mostly funded, as I say, a really amazing consortium that got together, a whole bunch of acronyms that I won't read for you, but coordinated by AUI, the Associated Universities Incorporated, and all these other, incredible organizations that are part of the science that goes on there. That was our itinerary this past December. And so we're really going to Santiago, we're seeing some offices, and then we're visiting 2 main sites. So we're going north to La Serena, visiting Cerro Tololo, Gemini, Rubin, Victor Blanco, they're all telescopes or observatories, and then flying to Calama, where the postcard perfect, beautiful ALMA array is out in the desert. And then back to Santiago, back to Boston, back to the cold. Very, very hard adjustment after being down in Chile in the summer.
How long was it?
It was so just under 2 weeks. Bear with me. Some of these slides are for a grade school audience, so it's where we're going, where we flew into. And then La Serena is there, midway up the map, and then Calama at the very top. And interestingly, as we moved north, we got higher and higher. So Santiago above sea level, La Serena, I forget exactly how many meters above sea level, but by the time we got to Calama, we were at 10,000 feet, and at the high site where the radio telescopes are, that was 15,000 feet. So very good for your high altitude oxygen training. As a reminder, it was often mentioned we were on Indigenous land while we were there, variety of Indigenous groups on the land that's now referred to as Chile, including the Mapuche and the Lika Antai. And what's really great is the presentations and the people we met weaved in Indigenous astronomy with the Western astronomy that we were learning about while we were there. So I'm sure some of the engineers in here or technicians are hungry to see what the telescopes were that we saw. So literally just telescopes everywhere, right? I started off writing down all the names, and eventually I thought, I'm sure I can find a list later. It was like mushrooms, right? Everywhere you turn, there were more telescopes. Every country had a telescope. Every university had a telescope. This is the place to do astronomy, right? I don't need to tell you, right? It is high, it's dry. Many sites are away from light pollution and relatively politically stable, right? So for the past several decades, it's become home to an increasing share of the world's astronomy infrastructure. I think at last count, it hosts over 50% of the world's astronomy infrastructure. This is the site from Cerro Tololo, which in the local indigenous language means, does anybody know? Edge of the abyss. And you can kind of see why, because you have these mountaintops and then these sheer drops on the other side. This is around sunset from one of the sites. And this is a very long sunset. Sunset took a really long time because we were so high up. Something I hadn't been used to. I'd never been to the Southern Hemisphere, never been this high up. So sunset took a long time. Just tons of views like this, right? We were just spoiled. You know, the Milky Way wasn't very high up because of the time of year, but luckily we got to see the Magellanic Clouds, right? Like this. I'd never seen the Magellanic Clouds, right? Never seen the Southern Cross. So it was hard to sleep, right? Because you would have a very packed day and then you wouldn't want to go to bed. So you'd stay up all night looking at the stars and then wake up exhausted the next morning and do it again. So it'd be very fun, very thrilling. And I think you don't realize how tired you are until you get back home. One of the many very cool telescopes was the Victor Blanco telescope. I believe was one of the largest in the Southern Hemisphere for a long time, named for Puerto Rican astronomer Victor Blanco. There's the inside of the telescope there. Got to get close up, got to learn about all the the coatings on the mirrors, how often they clean the mirrors, and meeting everyone involved in these telescopes, right? From the construction worker, the technician, to the data scientist, to the person that's blasting the mirror with carbon dioxide to clear it, right? So just everyone. It's a real city that makes these telescopes operational. Some new constellations for me. I'd never been to the Southern Hemisphere, so I got to see the Southern Cross and the dubiously named False Cross. So when I got lost in the desert, which I'll talk about in a second, I tried to avoid the False Cross and focus on the Southern Cross. Got lost in the desert one night. I thought, well, I know my way around the night sky pretty well, but I don't know it so well in the Southern Hemisphere. So I went back early on my own from one of the mountaintop observing nights. And I said the words that no one should say alone in the desert, which is, I'll be fine on my own getting home. And I wanted to get back because for the only time in our trip, we had a washing machine and a dryer, which I didn't expect, but we were near a construction barracks near our site. So I thought, why don't I do some laundry? Bad idea. Got lost for about an hour and a half. And only when I realized the road was turning into gravel, was turning into sand, was turning into brush, was turning into a construction vehicle graveyard, realized I was lost, turned around, and used the Southern Cross to get back. But yeah, it was interesting. It was the first reaction when everyone went down there. You know, there were professors of astronomy in the group, right? There were people who run planetariums, and everyone's reactions, we were all like children. It was like, everything's turned around, right? Everything's flipped, right? Is that people's experiences in the Southern Hemisphere? Yeah. So why is the Orion Nebula up there, not down there, right? Okay, so let's play a game. Bear with me. I think it's fun for all ages. So we were struck by how similar the Atacama Desert is to Mars. And many of you know that NASA tests a lot of its rovers in the Atacama Desert. So, can you tell me, is Mars or the Atacama Desert? Mars. If you think Mars, raise your hand. Sure. All right, Mars, we got some Mars people. What about Atacama Desert? All right, we got 1, 2, 3, Atacama Desert. And the Mars have it. Right. One night there was a dust storm that kicked up. And in the cafeteria there, looking out at this dust billowing in, it really felt like I was, was it Matt Damon in The Martian, watching this dust storm roll in? Like, I felt like I was a visitor to Mars in the year 2200. It was just really otherworldly. Okay. Another picture here. Maybe you learned from the last question. Is this Mars? Raise your hand if you think it's Mars. Okay, all right. Who thinks it's the Atacama Desert? Yes. You've gotten wise to me. It's the Atacama Desert.
Tire tracks kind of gave it a run.
Oh, are there tire tracks? Earlier, there was a piece of rebar in the foreground when I did the same activity, and I thought I had gotten rid of that clue. But there's tire tracks, so I will crop the photo for the next one. That's good. That's funny. Yeah. And then last one, this is a bonus one. Is this the Valley of the Moon, Chile, or the moon? Is it the moon? La Luna?
No.
No. Does anyone think it's the moon? Raise your hand if it's the moon. All right. Who thinks it's the Valley of the Moon? Correct. This was a treat that we saw on the way out of the ALMA site, Valley of the Moon indeed. So just moments like that all the time, right? Where you don't know if you're on Earth or Mars or the moon. It's just, really bewildering and awe-inspiring. Okay, so some of you are probably want to hear about the Vera Rubin Observatory. We did get to see that. We couldn't go inside because we weren't wearing steel-toed boots, but we got to walk near it and around it. So I believe first light is later this year. So we're seeing it on the cusp of opening. A special treat was we got a piece of glass, extra glass, that was used in the construction of the mirror. I'm gonna hold that up for the camera here. This is spare glass that wasn't quite pure enough or good enough. It didn't make the cut. This is manufactured in the mirror lab at the University of Arizona. So as a souvenir, one of the ambassadors from Arizona brought this glass with him, passed it out, great souvenir. So not this glass, but a cousin of this glass is in the mirror on the telescope in the Vera Rubin Observatory. That's the LSST telescope in the Rubin Observatory. Okie dokes. There is Vera Rubin herself, an astronomy pioneer. This will be the first, but hopefully not the last observatory named for a woman. Her work confirmed the existence of dark matter, under-recognized in her day, but with the observatory, I hope she can be recognized for the work that she did do as a trailblazer for female scientists, her research on dark matter, and really opening up a whole new field of astronomy around dark matter and dark energy, which the Vera Rubin Observatory will be involved in researching. So I thought I'd seen all the telescopes on one mountaintop. I looked over and there were more. Some of these are private telescopes or astrotourism telescopes. So that's another aspect of this that I found very interesting. Astronomy as a tool of local economic empowerment and development. Everywhere you go, it seemed like there was someone who was involved in astronomy, either working in one of the government facilities who helped build the government facility, or who was maybe running an astro tour business on the side. So kind of like an astronomer's dream, right? Everyone is part of astronomy down there. I won't have time to go into all the nitty-gritty of the partnership, but some of you might be curious, sort of, well, who gets what out of what? Is it a partnership? What does Chile get out of it? So I sort of broke down some of the points here of who gets what Chile gets from this partnership, what the US gets from the partnership. The US, of course, isn't the only country involved in telescope operations in Chile. We have the Europeans, the Japanese, the Taiwanese government. So each of them have these sort of agreements with Chile. In most cases, in return for the land, there's some kind of direct or indirect monetary transfer. There's local investment. And then in most cases, Chile is given, or Chilean astronomers are guaranteed 10% of observing time. So, in addition to Rubin, this was the other highlight, which made me feel like I was, watching the movie Contact. And no, we're not in New Mexico. We're in the high Atacama Desert. At this point, we are about 15,000 feet up with the 66 radio telescopes of the ALMA array. This is a partnership between the Europeans, Japanese government, and the US. They're involved in radio astronomy. Contact, yep, felt like Matthew McConaughey, or is that Jodie Foster?
Yeah.
Jodie Foster, right? Okay. Very young Matthew McConaughey. All right. So if you do go down, be sure to get a medical exam. They are strict about it for good reason. They don't want folks passing up halfway up to the mountaintop. We did a medical exam at 10,000 feet. A few of us didn't make it, as in we weren't cleared to go up. We all survived. But if you had to stay at 10,000 feet, which was unfortunate due to health problems that were detected at the last minute, and the rest of us continued up with our oxygen tanks. I'm looking a little woozy there. Happy and maybe a little in oxygen dead. Okay. So I don't need to tell you what radio astronomy is, but I did like this diagram that helped me understand how some of these telescopes work together, right? Whether they're in space or on the ground, or working together to observe, hopefully, all or most of the electromagnetic spectrum. And this is a question I get a lot when doing outreach. It's like, well, why do you need this telescope if you have the Hubble or you have the JWST, right? And so, anyway, I like this picture. This is me repping some of my swag, my merchandise down there, up at the high site at 15,000 feet. Behind me are those 66 radio telescopes.
Did you have to use the oxygen the whole time you were up there?
I did, and it's funny. When we got down, someone asked, "Hey, was it just me, or did anyone else turn off their oxygen just to see what it was like?" And it turns out most of us did, but we were afraid to tell each other, right? Well, we all did. About half of us turned the oxygen off just to see what it would be like. And immediately, woozy, headache, narrowed vision. So I had to keep it on. You could turn it up to, I think, up to 5. I had it 2 or 3 most of the time.
Do the people that work there get acclimated, or are they all walking around?
They
with
do and they don't. I'm following a lot of the people on Instagram now who work up there, and they usually have oxygen on. Yeah, I think there's some tough guys who try and do it without oxygen, but most of them do. Yeah.
How long were you up there?
Brief, and I think there's rules on how long you can stay.
Yeah, I know a bit about
yeah.
altitude acclimatization.
Yeah, go for it.
Approximately how many hours were you up?
Yeah, so I'd say at the high site, probably half an hour. Yeah, but not very long. I think what helped is that, throughout our trip too, every couple of days, we were getting higher into the altitudes. That might have helped too, right?
Very much so.
Yeah, maybe that was the genius behind the itinerary planning. Yeah.
They don't want to kill you too quickly.
Don't want to kill you. We got to go back and tell our communities and talk to our congresspeople. So, wow. Just a lot of wow views, a lot of wow pictures.
Is that your photo?
It is not my photo. It is one of the other ambassadors. Does anyone know what this is?
The telescope.
Exactly. And does anyone know its name?
Telescope mover.
I like that. This one is affectionately known as Otto. There are 2 telescope transporters. This one's name is Otto. It is custom built to move the telescopes. And what it does is it actually hugs the telescope, lifts it up, and moves it. And they're moving the telescopes around pretty often. When we were there, we saw the transporter moving at least twice, whether it's bringing the telescopes down for repairs or moving them into different configurations. For scale, that's my not so big hand in real life. So you can see that it's dwarfed by the tire. That is Danilo, who is the education outreach officer for ALMA. What's really cool is every observatory has a team of education outreach folks who are, welcoming international visitors like myself, or bringing in local school children, or partnering with the local Indigenous community to ensure there's good relationships there. So it's a really great example of education outreach. Right? Okay, so this worked. Let's see. Excuse my enthusiasm on the video here. Is this gonna work?
That's Mars, right?
No. It's back to the moon. Oh, no. There we go.
That's faster than I thought.
Yeah, I think top speed is 8 kilometers an hour.
They don't put them on tracks like the LA, huh?
No, and they talked about the difference between this and the tracks at the array in New Mexico. Yeah, for whatever reason, they opted to build these transporters in this case and not have them on railway tracks.
Are they self-powered? Or are they wired?
You have to plug them near an outlet.
There's a documentary on Netflix
Oh, yeah? Oh, no way. Oh,
about moving one of the telescopes on one of the 2 crawlers. Yeah,
I'll check it out.
yeah.
Do you remember the name of it?
I'll find it though and share it. It's really good. It deals with the driver and the team that actually moves, and yeah, it was really
Yeah.
fun to watch.
Netflix, huh? Cool.
That's so cool. Didn't feedback. There's also 2 people in the cab in case one person passes out for lack of oxygen. There's someone whose sole job it is to hit there's a big red button. And their job is, if the first driver passes out, their job is to press the red button and bring everything to a halt. I think they're called the dead man. Very ominous. I won't have as much time as I'd like to give this the full credit it's due, but I was happy to see mention and discussion of Indigenous astronomy. Not surprisingly, Indigenous astronomy there reflects the lived conditions of Indigenous peoples to that area, including local flora and fauna, namely llamas and alpacas. This is a stylized depiction of a llama, a dark sky llama, which I'll explain in a second what that is, on the window at one of the offices we visited. So really great to see that kind of representation. It was new to me that for many Indigenous folks in the area, many of the constellations were dark constellations. So based on the outline of shapes you would see in the dust clouds, such as in the Milky Way, right? So the negative space rather than connecting stars. And again, local flora and fauna in those dark sky constellations. We also visited a nature reserve that's co-managed with an Indigenous community, where they really happy to see brought home connection between cosmology, agricultural, human living, Indigenous relationships with the land. We saw a piece of Indigenous star technology, which is an espejo de agua. Anyone speaks Spanish? Speak Spanish here. Espejo de agua is a
Water mirror.
water mirror, exactly. And I got to see it firsthand. I looked down when I was walking out that night, and there was a sky reflected in this pool of water. And you could use that, to do calculations or to do observations. That was really neat. And that's Paula, the director of the preserve. This is a local elder talking about connections between the sky, cosmology, crops, human living. Also, it was just really cool. This night was, on top of all that great stuff, there was a music night on traditional instruments, playing songs that were about the night sky, right? So it was just, everything was connected, right? Sky, land, music, people, humans. And just to show you the economic impacts, this gentleman runs a business, putting on these performances and telling folks, visitors, about the night sky. So there's a direct economic impact of the astronomy industry down there too. I would say indirect economic impacts of all the astronomy going on there. This is me at altitude again. All right, so we're almost at time. Let me just show you some of the great people I met down there. This is Ricardo, who's an engineer, former Air Force pilot turned engineer who works at ALMA. And someone asked him, what's the most important thing here at ALMA? And he didn't say the tractor crawlers or the telescopes or how big the telescope dishes were. He said people, right? And you can have all the money and all the cool technology, but if the people are lousy and you don't get along, it's going to be a lousy place to work and no science is going to happen. So Ricardo said your people are at the heart of this. So with that spirit, I tried to take as many selfies with the various staff we met before I left. So here is a safety officer at the Vera Rubin Observatory. That's a translator on the right, Kata. Sonia, Diversity and Outreach Coordinator at NRAO. Dr. Vivas, a scholar of dwarf galaxies orbiting the Milky Way. Danilo and Juan, outreach officers. On the left, we have staff from an astrotourism company that does pop-up astronomy in cities in Chile. He's also an astronomy student down there. On the right, we have an astronomer from Japan. So you're seeing there's an international element to this as well. On the left, that is the director of ALMA. I got a picture with him. This is Waldo on the right, one of our guides. So I will wrap up now with some brief pictures. Here's an example of some of those astrotourism businesses that we saw, and really everywhere. Local grad student was giving a talk at this is a winery that's supplementing its income with astrotourism. So great for the winery owners, great for visitors too, right? You've got wine and the night sky. What could be better? And if you have questions, I'll hang out afterwards. If you have questions about some of the outreach and diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, really robust for women, right? For first-generation students, for Indigenous peoples. They're aware of the gaps in representation in astronomy, and they're doing their best to address it. If anyone is doing bilingual outreach in Spanish, English, there's a ton on these observatories' websites, including this one. I thought of you, Kelly. There's a whole activity here in Spanish about light pollution. And by looking up, it helps us look down, right? So we're looking at the Magellanic Clouds, but then we're also seeing wild donkeys, right? We're seeing, might be a llama, I think it's a llama. And flamingos. We drove through a very large salt flat on the way out. Right? And last but not least, what about that llama? What happened with the llama? What do we think happened with the llama? Close. It kissed me, but before it kissed me, it
Spit.
Yes. Wait. How do we play this video? See, I'm wearing a lot of sunscreen. It was a very wet kiss, and I learned my lesson. If their ears are back, it means they're kind of aggressive and ready to pounce. Didn't know that, mistook it for friendliness. We'll never do that again. So thank you so much for listening, presentation. If nothing else, please consider applying. They have folks going every year. Application is open. Happy to vouch for you if you want me to. Just a really wonderful, really life-changing experience. So thank you so much, and I'm happy to take any questions now. And before I do, I was going to tease something. Thanks to Corey, we are planning hopefully a citywide, right, astronomy night in Chelsea. So we're having our meeting with the director of the Chelsea Recreation Department, I think in just a couple days.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll have more details on that. So
It'll be exciting.
should be excited.
Sidewalk or?
Sidewalk, yeah. And maybe one of Corey's cool light projection displays. That's the hope? Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Cool. All right. So what questions do you have for me? Yes.
Money, how much did it cost?
So about half the group was self-funded, and half the group got funding from the government. I was in that second group. I think if you do it on your own, I think costs about $6,000. But I was only responsible, since I got funding, just from my airfare there and back. And I was very fortunate that I got my university to pay for the airfare. So I ended up paying, I think I got like $1,000 to cover airfare there and back. Yeah. Yes?
May I talk to you afterwards? I am a science teacher.
Oh, amazing!
Yeah, and I would love to talk to you about that. But two, you're from the University of Toronto. Have you seen work done or been able to use at all the Dragonfly telescope?
I have not. No.
Because they developed it, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always nice to see Canada making appearances, you know? They were just in the news today. They're redoing the brain of ALMA, which will like quadruple its processing power or something. I think Canada contributed to some component of that. But yeah, I'd love to talk more about the Dragonfly. Yeah. Any questions from Zoom? Zoom. Yes, over here.
So what follow-up responsibilities do you have in terms of outreach?
Yes, a great question. So this is one of them. And I think we all want to do it, right? Even if they didn't ask us to, right? Like we want to do it. Like it would feel selfish to keep all this cool stuff to ourselves, right? But in return, they ask you to do 7 outreach activities. And that could be a blog, could be a podcast, could be an event like this. Cool. Yeah. Is anyone thinking of applying? Yes. Okay. I really hope you do. Any questions up there in the back? No? Okay. Well, thank you so much. You've been a wonderful audience. And now that I'm back in Boston, hope to see more of you soon. Oh, this is actually it was a centerpiece at a friend's wedding, and they got married at the Adler Planetarium in Chicago. And so the centerpiece was this. Instead of flowers, it was surrounded by lights and like a big black cloth. So pretty cool.
Thank you so much, Michael. That was really cool. Jealous. Sounds like an amazing trip.
You will go too someday.
Lights.
So with that, I'll officially close the meeting. Next meeting is March 9th. And don't forget, we have that board meeting coming up 2 weeks from now, February 23rd. Members are invited to join the Zoom and listen in if they like.
Is it going to be in person or only on Zoom?
I think it'll just be on Zoom. I don't think there's a large itinerary of stuff to cover. It'll just be a catch-up and discussion because I failed to schedule one over the winter.
Wow.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
We have refreshments back there.